So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this patient engagement for Open Forum virtual event. This session is part of a series of virtual events that will be recorded and shared afterwards. This year, the Patient Engagement Open Forum is a series of virtual events where we will work together in a multi-stakeholder context to turn patient engagement from an aspiration into reality. The forum aims to provide a holistic perspective of patient engagement, the landscape and actors, and foster collaboration and co-creation while breaking down fragmentation that are often present in patient engagement work. So let's work together to spread the word. And you can use these tags if you want to share what we have talked about here today. So besides this session today, there are a lot of sessions coming up in the coming weeks and months. So if you have interest in joining one of these sessions, please sign in for these as well. So before we start the webinar, I just want to share some practical things with you to ensure a good running of this webinar. So as you have noticed, you will be muted when entering the webinar. We want this session to be as interactive as possible, so you can provide your feedback through polls and word clouds. Sometimes we are also interested in hearing your thoughts, and you can enter them through the chat function. And in the chat function, you can choose to submit your responses only to the panelists, which means that they are only visible for the people who are organizing this webinar. Or if you also want the other attendees to see it, you can submit your response to all attendees. We also will try, if possible, to have some verbal exchange with you. So if you want to say something, please use the raise icon hand. And when you are given the word by the moderator will unmute you so that you can speak. And as I said in the beginning, this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available on the Patient Engagement Open Forum website. So now we will start the real program. Welcome all to this session. Motherhood should not be a fight. Better safety information on medicines used during pregnancy and breastfeeding with patients for patients. As the title says, we are interested in improving the information provision about medicine used during pregnancy and breastfeeding. And we are doing this as part of the Conception project, which you will hear about more in a couple of minutes. Today, we have put together a program for you, which we hope you will find interesting. We are interested in hearing your thoughts on different topics, so we try and be as interactive as possible with such a large group of people present. A number of persons will speak and interact with you during this session. Please let me introduce them to you. And first is Fergal O'Shaughnessy. Fergal is a pharmacist in the Irish Medicines in Pregnancy Service at the Rotunda Hospital in Dublin, Ireland. Fergal works as a part of a multidisciplinary team that aims to support safe and effective medication use in pregnancy and breastfeeding through information provision, research, and education. Mirjam Sturkenboom is a professor in observational data analysis, working at the Julius Global Health Group at the University Medical Center Utrecht in the Netherlands. Her research focuses on knowledge discovery from data collected in routine healthcare to improve evidence on drug and vaccine safety, in particular in vulnerable populations. And she is also the coordinator of the Conception project. Roxana is an experienced marketing and communication manager with over 8 years of results both in the NGO and corporate sector, in areas like stakeholder engagement, corporate communications and branding, digital marketing and project development, content marketing and events management. Roxana has a degree in communication and business management and developed expertise in the health sector on various topics: maternal health, patient engagements, rare diseases, medtech, and others. And my name is Linda Hermark, and I will be your moderator today. I'm a pharmacist working at the Netherlands Pharmacovigilance Center Laren. I have 15 years of experience in drug safety, and I am very passionate about patient involvement in pharmacovigilance. So Miriam, we will start the presentation what conception is. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Linda, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning for those who join from other parts of the world, or good evening. So I have the privilege actually to introduce the Conception project, which is a very large project with many partners, as we will see. So I'm talking to you on behalf of the entire Conception Consortium. Next slide, please. Linda, can you do the next slide, or can I move it myself? Okay, so first, I would like to discuss with you what is Conception. It's a project, and it's also a consortium, and the consortium is really a public-private partnership, which is that it's funded through the European Innovative Medicines Initiative that really aims to create these public-private partnerships to enhance research on drugs in Europe or medicines in Europe. So that means that for this project, there is an idea usually being initiated by the FPA company, so that's the pharmaceutical industries. So in this instance, for Conception, the idea came from Novartis, that then is connecting to all the other FPA companies to see whether they want to partner. They put together a request for proposal to which a public organization and consortium can then apply. So this then resulted in the final Conception project, and it's now co-led by Novartis that started the trajectory and University Medical Center Utrecht. So it started in April 2019, last year, and so we just passed the 1 year target, actually the first annual report, but we will continue until 2024. The total funding for this project is 28 million. Because of the fact that it's a public-private partnership, there's 15 million cash coming from the European Commission and 13 million in-kind contribution from the FPA companies. Next slide, please. So who is Conception? It's a large number of people and organizations. So there is a management team, there is a managing board, which comprises all the work package leaders, as it's called in European terminology, and there are observers from the Women's Health Initiative, Hildren Sunset. And then there are more than 200 persons that are working together. And the consortium does include the European Medicines Agency, drug manufacturers, academia, small, medium enterprises, public health organizations, and women's and health and teratology networks. Next slide, please. So here you can see where all the participating countries are located. So 51 partners, 7 linked third parties, 28 third parties, and 200 researchers. And here is the spread through Europe. Next slide, please. So let's look at the rationale of why we started the Conception project. Next slide. Basically, Conception has been created as a project because we do all feel and we share the vision that a woman has the right to safe and effective use of medication based on scientific evidence, especially because she is taking a decision for two. We know that globally 200 million women get pregnant each year, 5 million of which are in the European Union. Many women have chronic illnesses or get ill, and actually the number is increasing over time because women tend to be older when at first pregnancy. So we do see an increase in the prevalence of chronic illness upon first pregnancy. We also know that the use of medications is actually quite high. Often more than 90% of women are using one or more drugs during the pregnancy. We also know from literature reviews on package inserts, so the labels that are part of the drug package as you receive it when you get a prescription or a drug dispensing, we know that evidence is largely lacking in the package inserts. It's often stating that there is a lack of evidence on the safety of drugs during pregnancy, and that is because pre-licensure, very few times there is enough information that is generated to be able to put that in the labels. Then we also know that there is fragmentations and inconsistency regarding advice and knowledge, and there is lack of sustainable infrastructure to generate it. So there are networks around Europe, such as Euromedicat, Eurocat, ENTIS, that are actually trying to be united across member states and even beyond Europe, that are trying to do something, but each and every one of them has difficulties to actually be sustained and to survive. So we did notice, and as part of the project, it's important that we do work together, because this creates a bigger critical mass and ability to generate enough voice so that this may actually be sustained. So conception really aims to create a solution to change the current situation where there is a need for better scientific evidence. Next slide, please. So what the mission of conception is really to build and test a trustworthy pan-European ecosystem for generating, monitoring, and providing robust and rapid real-world evidence on medication safety in pregnancy and breastfeeding. And we want to do that in a collaborative and standardized manner to inform labels, women, families, and healthcare professionals. Now, just to tell you, for those of you who may be wondering, what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is really a system where you have capacity about people, data, and infrastructures to be able to create something around a certain topic. So it's really about both, all of those aspects: the people, the methods, the IT infrastructure. Next slide. So here you see the visualization on how we think we can actually change the current lack of evidence. So we have created what we call a conception evidence pipeline, and you see it in a graphic, and I will take some time to walk you through this. Basically, we start on the left hand, and you see the type of data that conception would like to utilize to create evidence. So first thing is that we have data everywhere. So data is really like information points, basically, and just information or data alone is not enough to actually have evidence or evidence about the medication. So we want to go through this pipeline to transform the data into reliable evidence. So on the left hand, you see what we are using will be health data that is actually generated in routine care. So if you visit a doctor, you often see that they are putting information about the visit in the computer, or your lab test or your procedures will be somehow captured in an automated fashion. That data can be anonymized, made available actually for research. So in an anonymous fashion, it can actually be utilized. So that's health data. We will be using animal model data to actually predict whether drugs transfer in milk. We will be using reports that are generated by healthcare professionals or women themselves if they are pregnant and are using medications, so they may report that. There will be data on milk and blood to inform whether drugs transfer in milk, and there will be women reporting maybe through apps their information. So all of these novel data, all of these data sources will be utilized and go through this pipeline, which first means that they would be cataloged, meaning that we want to describe them in a clear manner, so you know what is in the data source. We need to create modalities to access data, so that's both technical as well as ethical and privacy considerations are there. The data need to be harmonized so we can actually analyze it in a good manner. And we need to make sure that the quality of the data is good enough to be generating the good evidence. Once we have cataloged the data, we can actually access it, it's harmonized and it's quality tested, then the analysis on it can be conducted, which would actually, based on certain protocols, generate the evidence that you may need to know, or the healthcare professionals or the patients. So it would be signal detection or conducting formal studies that would answer a specific study question that you may have. So this pipeline actually is scalable and is going to be optimized throughout the project. And then whenever it creates evidence or results from those studies, the intention is that results are actually reviewed by a panel of experts, combined with information that is available from labels and in the literature, and then it will be put on the knowledge bank. So on the right-hand side is actually the outward-facing part, where it's really about the evidence becoming available for all the stakeholders that we anticipate. And it's not that it just flows there. There will be an assessment made and a judgment made according to a protocol. Next slide, please. So while we, during the project, we will be optimizing the system, which in its pieces is there, and we will demonstrate that it works. We also want to make sure that whatever we create is actually acceptable. Can you squeeze once more, Linda? Yeah. So we did think in the project design that we do want to test whether this is acceptable, both to you as to patients, but also to healthcare professionals, to regulators, to all of the stakeholders that are. And we will conduct that stakeholder engagement throughout the project. Next slide, please. So this is the introduction to the project. If you have questions, I don't know when they can be asked, I think on the chat, or whether you want to have a certain, whether you want to put questions now, Linda, or afterwards?
I think we can take questions for you now. So you can either ask the questions through the chat, or you can raise your hand and I will give you the word. Are there any additional questions for Miriam? No? Okay, then I want to thank you very much, Miriam, for your presentation. And I think we have had a good start of getting to know the ConcePTION project a bit more in detail.
Thank you, Linda.
Yes. So we will now continue with the part about information about medicine used during pregnancy and lactation. So let's start with some questions and see if the technique is on our side. So if all things work as anticipated, you will now have a poll in your screen. So please select the answer that you want. So I think it's good to see that of the participants participating today, but maybe it's also you who are the most interested, a large majority of you actually need information or have needed information about medicine use during pregnancy and lactation. So then I have a second question for you. So when you are searching for information, where do you go for it? And here you can choose multiple answers. So here we see that a lot of you turn to your medical doctor for this information, but also a lot of people search for information on the internet. And also the medicine packaging, so the medicine label in the that accompanies the medicine is also a very often used source of information. And then the family and friends. Okay. And then the last one for me now. So because a lot of you said that you were looking for information online. So in what kind of, where online did you go to find your information? So let's see, a lot of you are using search engines to find information, or a very large proportion are using scientific articles. The patient organization website to a lesser extent, national medical systems. Okay, so it's a variety, but I think most of you would search directly from a search engine. And because there are a lot of information out there, so it's important to try and find the reliable information. So I would like to ask you, what makes you trust information about medicine use during pregnancy and breastfeeding that you find online? I would like you to go to menti.com, this link on the screen here, which will also be shared with you in the chat. And then we will do a word cloud to see what makes you trust information about medicine that you find. So when you have come to Menti, you can see the code on the slide now that you have to type in. So if you have gone to menti.com, you need to type in the code 744776, and then you can enter what makes information trustworthy to you. So evidence and doctor are very often used words. Okay. So, thank you for your input. Please continue to input if you haven't, but maybe there is someone who wants to explain more about what they consider be things that increases the trustworthiness of information. So if you want to say something, please raise your hand, or you can write it in the chat. Anyone who wants to comment? I see a lot about evidence, data. Oh, Mary, yes. Please, Mary. Waarom kan ik hem niet unmuten?
Yeah. Did I manage to unmute?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I think it depends on very much on which kind of community group you come from. I'm representing health professional organizations, and I think we have a very sort of escalated system of how we look at the evidence, and usually it's on a national level approved bodies or your own health professional bodies that provide some evidence, or you would look at those as to be more valid than just the internet opinions.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Anyone else wanting to make a comment? Okay. Yes?
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Karin.
Yes,
From
I
the
can hear
Netherlands.
you. Okay.
Hi, I'm a kidney patient, and standard information from the doctor is mostly what the doctors over and over explain, because that's the information they have got. So I think it's valuable to learn about other patients and their experiences, especially about certain medicines and the use of them after transplant and being pregnant, and whether they want to give breastfeeding or not.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I will take one more. That's Christina. Just a moment. Oh, my screen changed. Christina. Christina?
All right. Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. This is Christina. I'm actually signing in from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And as a patient, I had an awful experience with the physicians when I got pregnant and I had rheumatoid arthritis. I was taking a low dose of methotrexate and I was asked to kind of have an abortion like right away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's so important to maybe have that, that education. I honestly felt that at least like last year, there will be more education about medications and the impact on pregnant women. But it was really a roller coaster. I couldn't believe that I was going through that kind of hell. So I hope like this kind of leads to more education to overall all the healthcare professionals. Thankfully, my baby's fine.
Oh,
He was a healthy baby, but I just really want to have more trusted information available, across
yeah.
the globe, I guess.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that with us. Is there any? Okay. So we will need to continue. We see that there are some questions coming in, but we will try to address them as well through the chat or for the Q&A. So as Miriam touched upon, why is it so important to provide information about drug use during pregnancy and breastfeeding? And it is because drugs are very frequently used during pregnancy. And these can be medicines to treat chronic conditions, as well as medicines which are bought by the woman herself. And as you see in this slide, in Norway, a bit more than half of all women use medicines during pregnancy. But in France and Germany, almost all women use medicines during pregnancy. So why do we need a knowledge bank? As so many pregnant women are using medicines, it is important that they have access to information about the safety of the use of that medicine during pregnancy and breastfeeding, as they not only expose themselves to the medicine, but also their child. And to provide this information, we within the Conception Project want to create a knowledge bank where pregnant and breastfeeding women and the healthcare professionals that are treating them can find this information. But why do we need a knowledge bank? Is it not enough information out there already? There is a lot of information out there, but it might be difficult to find quality, trustworthy information. In an inventory done as part of this Conception project, we found that there is also inconsistencies regarding the knowledge and advice. For example, one source could say that you could use the medicine during pregnancy, while the other source could say that the same medicines should not be used. As a pregnant woman, it can then be very difficult to know how to handle such conflicting information. And by creating a European knowledge bank, we hope to solve this problem. So our vision of the knowledge bank is to create an independent, practical online search engine for both women and healthcare professionals. A platform that provides up-to-date information and advice validated by specialists, which promotes safe and effective use of medicines for pregnant and breastfeeding mothers, and empowers women to take informed decisions. So during these past years, we have been busy with during this past year, I would say, we have been busy with developing this knowledge bank, and we have now built a prototype of it. Before we proceed with the further development of the knowledge bank, we are very interested to hear your thoughts about it. As you are the end users of the knowledge bank, it is important that we design it and write the information in a way that it is useful to you. So I would like to invite you to take a look at the knowledge bank. So please go to the URL on the screen or use the link provided to you in the chat. When you enter the website, please move around the home page and click and read. Remember that this is a prototype, so it is just built for testing purposes. Even though we have tried our utmost best to quality assure the information, we would recommend you not to use the information in the text for treatment purposes at this stage. And also, I would like to ask you not to test the search function yet, because we'll do that shortly. So please try and move around the website for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then return to Zoom so that we can discuss your feedback. And if you have any questions during the time when you look at the website, please contact us through the chat and the Q&A so we can help you. Okay. So how did your testing session go? So, of course, we are very curious to know what your overall impression of the homepage was of the Knowledge Bank. So we would like you to write your impression in the chat. And in the chat function, you can choose to submit your response only to the panelists, which means that only the people working with this webinar can see your response. Or if you want to, you can also share your first impression with the attendees. So please go to the chat and give us your feedback. Okay, so we have one first comment, which is very positive. Thank you. So I got a comment that the chat function is disabled. I will check that. Otherwise, if you cannot enter into the chat function, then you can use the Q&A function. So it seems that the chat function is disabled. I will look into it if I can fix it. But otherwise, you can use the Q&A function to give your feedback. Of course, we appreciate good feedback, but also if you have things that you think can be improved, please don't be shy and tell us that as well. Okay. I'm sorry that the chat seems to be disabled. So we will use the question and answer also for the comments and the feedback for you, if that's okay with you. So on the website of the Knowledge Bank, we have something we call an In Focus session. And do you have suggestions for topics that you would like to see in this? And this time you can write your topics that you would be interested in seeing in the In Focus section in the Q&A chat as well. So I'm scrolling to see if I can answer some questions. There are some comments about that. So we will try and update the website on an ongoing basis. So when new evidence comes out, which might change the recommendations that we have, we would update it instantly. I also got one question about how does the site differ from the teratology information sites and what does it add? Not all countries have access to the teratology information site. So for those countries, that would be an addition. Okay, so thank you for that feedback. We also have sections on maternal diseases, or how the mother's disease might affect the pregnancy. What kind of information would you like to expect to find here? And please submit your suggestions through the Q&A. Okay. And my last question to you before I hand over to my colleague is, we are interested in knowing how you search for information. So could you please write in the chat the name of 2 drugs that you would be interested in reading information about? Okay. So if you entered your feedback, I would like to give the word to Fergal, who will continue to lead the session together with you. So Fergal, the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Linda. Thank you for joining us, everyone. So as you've already seen, or you've had a chance to see yourself, what the Knowledge Bank looks like. And I suppose the Knowledge Bank contains multiple information pages on specific drugs. So what we'd like to do now is to ask you to have a look at the information which is contained in the sample information page. And some of you have already given us some feedback about the language used and perhaps the amount of information contained in these information pages. So it's at this point now that I'd like you to focus on the content of that information. And after that, what we'll do is have a series of polls. We'll be using word clouds and hopefully have some time to discuss some of your feedback. So firstly, what I'd like you to do is to use the link which is provided in the chat. And this will bring you to the Knowledge Bank, which you've already had a look at. But what I'd like you to do is search for a specific drug called azithromycin. So azithromycin is an antimicrobial agent which is used to treat some infections. So for example, nose, throat, and chest infections. And we've developed a sample information page for azithromycin. So I'll give you now 10 or 15 minutes to read through the content which is contained in this information page and have a think about the type of information which is presented and formulate some opinions about the information which we're giving you. So I'll ask you now to do that task and to come back in 10 minutes to the Zoom and we'll continue our discussions. If in the meantime you have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A.
So we also receive a lot of questions for you, and I don't think we would have time to address all the questions during this webinar, but we will address all the questions and write answers to them, and we will then publish them together with the recording of this event, so that even though we don't answer your question now, you will get an answer to your question from us.
Okay, everyone, welcome back. So we're just going to kick off the next section. So the first thing to say is that we hope that the knowledge bank and the information that's contained in it will support women who are pregnant and breastfeeding when using medications. And we're really looking forward to getting feedback from you as patients and patient representatives. So in this next section, we're going to get your feedback on the content of the information page using azithromycin as an example. So I hope you've all had a chance to read that information page. So again, what we'll be doing is using polls and word clouds primarily to get your feedback. And in some situations, we may ask if time allows for you to provide information in the Q&A section. And if we have time, we'll ask people to speak if they would wish to do so. So poll number 4 asks about navigation. So you'll see a poll on screen here, which contains 2 questions. The first is it clear where to go for information on pregnancy and information on breastfeeding? So we'd ask you to answer yes or no. And the next question is, could you find out how to access information in different languages? So we'll leave that poll there for a minute and look at the results. Linda, whenever you're ready, if you want to put the results up on the screen, please. So it's encouraging to see that most people could find where to get information on pregnancy and on breastfeeding. And it's important to say that this is a site for both information. The next question is accessing information in different languages. So we hope for the Knowledge Bank to have some of the summary information translated into different European languages. I suppose the fact that 40% of people could not find that, perhaps it indicates that we need to make that a little bit clearer. So in the next slide, I'll talk you through the structure of the information pages, which may help to answer some of the questions that you have. So Linda, if you could just, that's great. So as you can see over on the left-hand side, there's pregnancy and breastfeeding. So this bar helps to navigate between the 2 sections. So in each page, there's a summary of information on pregnancy and a summary of information on breastfeeding. And it's encouraging that most people could find that. Next, if you look at the where the pregnancy title is here on this knowledge page, just to the right, there's a gray shaded box where you can change the translation of the information which is presented. And based on your feedback, perhaps we need to look at making this a little bit clearer. The information that's presented here can be divided into a number of different parts. The first is a summary paragraph at the top. And the first line of the summary paragraph we have intended to contain a key message about the use of the medication during pregnancy or breastfeeding. And the first paragraph, or the summary paragraph, is intended to be used by patients or carers or family members, and we hoped to provide information in a very understandable way here. The next section, under the details section, contains more detailed information about the use of this drug during pregnancy or breastfeeding. And I suppose it's intended to be used by advanced users of the website. And so the information may be more, maybe phrased in a more complicated way or a more scientific way, where the information goes through individual studies and tries to present the balance between the benefit and risk of using the medication. The final section of the website is references, where key information sources are highlighted so that if further reading is necessary, you can refer to these. So for the next section and the next number of polls, I'm going to be asking you about the type of it or the information that you read in each of this section. So Linda, if I could ask you to add the next poll, number 5. So that should be launching on screen here. So what we're looking to ask is, what information did you find most valuable? So was it the opening sentence which contained a key message? Was it the whole summary paragraph which was directed towards patients or carers? Or was it the details section which contained quite specific scientific information? Or was it all of this information together? The next question that we'd like to know was, did you read the details section? Or would you read the details section if you were using this in real life outside of a demonstration? So did you find this section useful? So Linda, I might ask you to put the results on screen for poll number 5, please. So that's very interesting that 60% of people who responded said that they would use all of the information. So that was the summary and the detailed information. And that most people would read the detailed information, which is a really, really important point. And so we need to take that back to consider that patients and patient organizations or representatives would use the detailed section. So moving on to poll number 6, I would like you to focus on the summary paragraph, which was presented at the start of the information page. And Linda, if you could launch poll 6 for me, that would be great. So here we're asking how you found the summary paragraph. Was it too long? Was it too short? Or was it just right? And then we want to know again about the summary paragraph, focusing on the level of information which was included in it. So was it too long or too detailed? Was it too short or not detailed enough? Or again, was it just right? So if you could just respond to that poll, please. And Linda, if we could just get the results of that poll up, please. So it's encouraging to see that everyone thought that the summary paragraph was of an appropriate length, and that most people thought that the level of information was appropriate, but maybe some people wanted more information contained in it. So moving on to the next poll, which is number 7. We want to know about how you found the readability of the summary. So how did you find reading it? And what we'd like you to do is rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, with a score of 1 indicating that you found it was very easy to read, and a score of 10 indicating that you found it very difficult to read. So we're focusing on the language used and how you found reading it. So I hope I'm giving you enough time to respond. I'm just conscious that we do have some other content that's really important that we'd like to get your feedback on. So Linda, if I could ask you to display the results of poll 7, please. So this is quite a little bit mixed, that some people found it very easy to read and some other people found it quite difficult to read. And I suppose this is really interesting for us because it shows that there is a wide variety of people and their ability to read and take in the information, especially if it is in English, which may not be some people's first language. But as I mentioned, we intend to have summaries translatable into your own local language. So the next poll, number 8, will ask about how you understood the information in the information page. And again, we're asking you to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So a score of number 1 would indicate that the information was very clear and very easy to understand. And a score of number 10 would indicate that you found it very difficult to understand. So there's a distinction here between what I asked you previously in terms of how you were able to read it and what I'm asking here, which is about how you understood the information. So Linda, I'd ask you to put the results of this poll up, please. Okay, so thank you to everyone who responded. And again, there's some variation that some people found the information very clear and easy to understand, and others found it a little bit more difficult to understand. And what we can take from this as when we're developing information pages for the Knowledge Bank in the future is that we can maybe tailor the information to make it more clear, easier to read, and easier to understand. So moving on to the next poll, which is poll number 9. I know many of you may not have taken this medication before, but I would ask you to put yourselves in the shoes of a woman who is taking this medication and who is pregnant. And what I'd like you to do is to indicate whether you would take this medication if you needed it, based on the information that you read, whether you would not take this information or this medication if you needed it, based on the information that you read, or whether you would need further advice or further information from a healthcare professional or from someone else before you made that decision. So Linda, if I could ask you to put the results up for this poll. Okay, so it's interesting to note that most people would discuss it further with their healthcare professional. And I suppose that would be appropriate in most situations, because women who receive care from their healthcare professionals should continue to do so. So the next poll, we're coming to the end of these polls. I hope you're not too sick of them. But I suppose what we really want to know is whether you found the information page and the knowledge bank useful. So overall, do you think that it would be valuable for women who are pregnant or who are breastfeeding? And the next is, would you recommend the knowledge bank to others based on the information that you've been presented with today? And Linda, if I could ask you to put the results up. Okay, so that's encouraging that most people did find it valuable and would recommend. And perhaps there is some work to be done in order to encourage others or to allow others to recommend it in the future. And perhaps those who have said that they weren't sure or that they wouldn't recommend, perhaps in the Q&A you could provide some information, if you're comfortable to do so, about what we could do as we go forward with the knowledge bank, so that you would find it valuable and that you would be able to recommend it. So the next section then, we would like to get your feedback on what you liked about the knowledge bank and the information page which we presented to you. So again, I'll ask you to go to menti.com as you did before, You'll be presented with the code on screen here. And if you enter in some information about what you liked, so it'd be helpful if there was individual words that you could put up about what you liked about the knowledge bank. So Stephanie is presenting there, so we can see if you could enter the code 744776 and enter some phrases about what you liked about the knowledge bank, and hopefully they'll pop up on screen here. So in the interest of time, I may move on, but please do continue to tell us what you liked about the knowledge bank, because this is really important for us to find out what is working and what we've done well so far. But on the flip side of that, we do acknowledge that there may be some room for improvement. And so we would really like to get some feedback from you about what suggestions you have. So is there anything which, and some of you have provided that already, but perhaps if you could use the Q&A to give some feedback and make some suggestions of what we could do to improve the information pages and the knowledge bank. And unfortunately, we don't have time to ask for individuals to join us and comment, but we will respond to your suggestions in the Q&A where possible. And before we move on to Roxana's last section, because the knowledge bank is European-wide, there are lots of different people who we hope will use this. And based on the language and the different cultures and societies, there may be different phrases which people use. So what we'd like to do is get some feedback from you about what phrases you think are most appropriate to use. So Linda is going to launch a poll which contains some phrasing options. So we'd ask you to indicate which do you prefer, or which would you like to read in the information pages and in the knowledge bank. So would you prefer mother or pregnant woman or breastfeeding woman? When we talk about the baby or the infant, is it infant or is it baby, or is it when we're talking about pregnancy, fetus, and when we're talking about breastfeeding, newborn? Would you prefer to read where we refer to medication, to medicine, or drug? Would you prefer us to refer to breastfeeding or to lactation? Would you prefer us to use terms like malformation, or would you prefer birth defect? And then when we're talking about if there is a risk or a potential for a malformation with a drug, or perhaps there is not, would you prefer us to talk about the chance of a malformation, for example, or the risk of a malformation? So for each of those polls, if you could just respond as to which you personally would prefer to read. And as you're entering that information, I'd just like to thank you so much for your valuable input, for taking the time to read the information pages, which of course may not be of relevance to you, so you may not be taking this medication. But thank you for your objective feedback. And what we hope to do is take this feedback and incorporate it as we go forward with developing knowledge pages. So for your information, there's the results of the poll. So again, thank you so much for all of your input. And I'll hand you over to Roxana for the next section and the final section of this.
Thank you, Virgo. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here and read and hear all your valuable feedback for this knowledge bank, which clearly is extremely needed in the European space and even beyond that. And I've seen, even in the Q&A section, I've seen some questions and even some suggestions on how we're going to market this and how we're going to make sure as many people as possible benefit from this product produced in conception with so many partners. And a first very important element of that is the branding. So right now, together with a wide group of people, we are in the process of developing the name, tagline, iconography, and also a color scheme for this knowledge bank. This will be then integrated in the design and user experience of the platform. So right now, it's going to be really quick. I know for sure all of you are busy. We're going to go through some quick polls to see your preference in terms of some names, taglines in the first stage. These have been proposed by a group, so I'm really curious to see what's your first reaction. And we can start, I think, with poll 12. So you can see on the screen a series of names, and the objective is to show as clearly as possible what the user can get, what you can get when entering the knowledge bank. Please choose your favorite. And Linda, maybe we can show the results as soon as we have some responses. Okay, good. Thank you. So it's clear that there are two names in the running, PregMed and Mothers Using Medicine Safely, so moms. Thank you so much for that. We're going to take this back in the group and see which one we're going to move forward. We can then move to poll number 13. So the name always comes in conjunction with a tagline. It's our belief that the tagline should be as clear as possible and clearly showing the value and what exactly are you going to get if you want to use this platform. So maybe we can show the next poll on the, thank you. Please choose your favorite. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just something that speaks to you for the first time when you see it. We'll give it a minute so everybody has the chance to vote. And Linda, please show the results when you're ready. I'm very curious. Okay, so I think the one which is the most descriptive tagline is the preferred one. Thank you so much for that. By the way, if you have suggestions or additional feedback compared to the poll you see on the screen, please feel free to use the Q&A. We might not have the opportunity to answer everything today, but we're going to for sure follow up with all of you. Thank you so much. We're going to move then to this next slide, which is showing some fun elements of the branding. These are usually my favorite. So you see some logo proposals on the left-hand side and some color schemes on the right-hand side that should work together. And this is a bit of a different poll because you're going to have to look at your screen, see which element you prefer the most, and then choose in the poll the number that represents the element or the color palette that you prefer. So the first poll that you're going to see on the screen is 14. Take a look at the icons you see. They're all in black and white because we just look at right now at the imagery. And go with your first instinct and pick a number. This should have been quick, I think. Linda, please show us the conclusions when we're ready. Number 1, okay, thank you. 1 and 2 are the preferred ones. with some options for the other two. Thank you so much for that. And the last one on the list is the color palette. You have 3 options on the screen. They have some similarities. By the way, you can move around if you drag and drop the poll window that appears on your screen. Again, go with your instinct and vote your preferred one. Maybe we can already see which one is most second one. Okay, very close results here especially between the first and the second. Thank you so much for this. This is really helpful for us because as the entire knowledge bank development, the branding should be also a collaborative effort and a co-created effort. So thank you for your input. We'll take that into account and come back to you with more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxana, for that. And I think we're about time to stop. I want to thank everyone for having been with us today. We really appreciate that you have taken the time to provide us with your feedback. For those of you who have asked questions and didn't get an answer, we will address your questions and publish it together with the recording of this webinar. I would also like you to fill in the satisfaction survey that you will receive tomorrow. This is the only way that the organizers of these webinars can ensure that the content stays relevant to the community. If you have any questions or if you have any comments or more feedback from us that you didn't share with us today, but if you wish to share it at a later moment, please feel free to contact us on my email address, which you will see in the window. Thank you very much for your participation.